So that's really for us what we mean by leadership. So when we look at these are all the different facets of leadership, right? We looked at purpose. So there needs to be a purpose, vision, groups of people, teams coming together to achieve outcomes that we want. But that's really what is leadership, isn't it? Now, each one is a loaded word, by the way. It's not easy to find someone's purpose just like that. It's about finding meaning in what we do, and it takes sometimes lifetimes together to actually find meaning in what we do, isn't it? And here we are talking about um, corporations and organizations finding their meaning, societies and cultures, and various entities finding their meaning, groups of teams that are coming together to find their meaning. That's the purpose that we are talking about. So how could that be? So let's look at what does it mean for us. But it's also looking at vision itself. So setting our bar high, but also being realistic about it. What can we do? Being able to see far into it. That's leadership as well. And leadership is not alone. If you're alone, you're not a leader, isn't it? So you're going to be a solo achiever, which is great, but then you're not a leader. We all know that what you can do alone in in long amounts of time can be done in much shorter amounts in a much more impactful way, in much with much better outcomes when there is a group of people coming together, when there is a team that works. And so how do you empower them, how do you work with them closely is really the stuff of leadership. And then finally, outcomes. So leadership is about outcomes. It's about getting the right kind of outcomes. What are those outcomes? So let's also look at those in just a bit. What do I mean by all of these things? When I talk about purpose, I'm talking about something like this. Let me tell you the story of Carlos Rodriguez Pastor. So he's the CEO of Intercorp in Peru. He used to be a vice president in Citibank in New York, one of the largest banks in the world. Happily, leading his life. It was the early 90s. Happy going on and feeling comfortable and joyous. And one such day, when he was resting in his apartment, he gets a call from his father, Carlos Rodriguez, Pastor Senior. He gets a call from him. The father says, "Son, please join me in Peru. I've bought this bank called the Interbank. So please join me in here." Understandably so, he's Carlos Rodriguez Jr. is reluctant. He says, "I'm already doing pretty well here in the Big Apple, in the best city in the world, in one of the largest companies, in the largest one of the largest banks in the world. I'm already doing well. So why would I want to come to a small place, small bank?" And then his father says to him something really important, which changes the way he thinks. He says, "Don't think of my bank, the Interbank, as a small bank. Think of it as the 25th largest bank in Peru." So he reorients himself. Carlos Rodriguez Jr. reoriented himself. And then he realized that that's a very different way of thinking. You can be out of 25 people or 25 banks, you can think of yourself as the smallest bank, or you can think of yourself as the 25th largest bank, and that can do wonders. So this was in the early 90s, and then that particular conversation makes him leave Citibank and join the Interbank. And today, Interbank is the fourth largest in Peru. But more importantly, it is the most profitable, and by far the most profitable. They were the first ones to introduce internet banking. They're one of the most innovative banks around Peru. But what is important is not the achievements that we see and associate with banks, the financial achievements. What is important is to see the purpose. That was very endearing and very inspiring. What he says here is that if his belief is that if you make the middle class families stronger, we can have a longer lasting democracy. And that is a telling statement, because we're talking about a country which has which has seen 22 coups, military coups, in about 100 years. So democracy that we take for granted is not something that so easily available for them. It requires a serious commitment, and that's what he's gone after. His ideal, that is democracy, is something he has gone after. That's the purpose with which he has started and worked with the Intercorp group as well. The group caters to a lot of middle class related aspirations and goals and needs. So they have schools, they have supermarkets, everything where a middle class visits is what their whole company is around. And that is why it is what it is today. They've created human-centered innovation labs and constantly looking to improve the lives of Peruvian families. That's the kind of purpose I'm talking about.